Hey guys, Bowie here, and this is things I've learned with Newbee.SCC Zeus in 7.16. As many of you know, Zeus got a couple of buffs in the last patch and prior patches, making him a better laner. But before we start this video, I just want to remind everyone, if you enjoy the videos that I put out and you want to see me here in the future, I would greatly appreciate if you follow me on Twitch. I'm casting every day, and Pvgna as a service will not sponsor me anymore, which means that my revenue stream will be reduced, and I'm trying my best to grow there as a caster. So if you care about that, please, I would appreciate you following me there. That being said, let's talk about Dota. With the bounty change, we don't see mids going for runes very often, but some mids are fine with it. There are mids that need to block either because they rely relatively high in dominating the lane like Quap, or because they can be easily dominated depending on the matchup like Shadowfiend. In this particular mid matchup, DK cannot really zone a Zeus past Free Fire usage, which means that with all the range and arc lighting, SCC can help his team and start the game with a crispy first blood without hindering his laning phase at all. As the game starts, pay attention how SCC plays. While Zeus has decent base damage to get some last hits without arc lighting, since DK blocked the lane, Radiant will push pretty hard. That would affect a hero like Shadowfiend greatly, but with Zeus, that's not a problem at all. Note how he tries to go for every CS, but when he sees that it's impossible, he relies on arc lighting and getting it. He gets pretty much every CS and doesn't get affected by the push from DK at all. One great thing to note as the next wave reaches him is that he doesn't save mana at all because his bottle is on the way already. He also only clarities after shoving the wave, which makes it impossible for DK to cancel it. He could definitely backpack that no talisman, but I will allow it. As level 2 comes, you can clearly see something very unusual. Getting 1 point in the passive is something you rarely see at level 2, and that's because there's a lot of kill potential with having 3 points in Lightning Bolt and 2 in Arc, and then getting your ult when you're level 6. Against DK's HP regen, and probably wand, that's never really going to happen. So SCC focuses in shoving the wave and getting as much CS as possible. Since he has that much extra push with the passive and then the third point in arc lighting, he shoves the wave at the 2-minute mark and goes hunting for the rune, but Radiant was quite smart and snatched it early. Even though SCC gets a Veil as his first item, he buys Soul Ring before it. Not only it makes him tankier versus all the gap close that Radiant has, the HP regen helps versus the Brief Fire spam since he has no wand, and is also a lot of value mana for the hero. It's also clear how the consistent damage buffs that come from 712 make the hero pretty good. When DK is forced to Dragon Tail, since he has no more Brief Fire, Zeus can actually get denies and trade decently, considering the past version of the hero. One thing that I didn't mention regarding the early value point in the passive is that Radiant has 4 strength heroes, meaning that there's unusual value in the spell, at least in SCC's eyes. Usually, you would see the spell being level at like level 8. It's also interesting to see that he never even bothered using Lightning Bolt to harass DK at all, and that goes to show how he doesn't even expect to be able to wear him down and get a kill at level 6. He focuses on getting as much CS as possible, which is not the way you always play Zeus, but it's a good adaptation to this matchup, kinda like the rune contesting thing that we saw at the start. He makes sure to spend all his mana as the bounties are about to spawn, and when you're in the dire side, you're way better positioned to make use of it. So he ties that up with a shrine, while he farms the camp, so that's pretty good, and he goes back at the perfect time to defend the push. Unfortunately though, a constant problem this game starts showing. Zeus has terrible cast animations, he's also super slow, and that makes him susceptible to ganks from heroes like Pudge. As he respawns, his team buys a ward, and note how he goes for it as soon as he respawns. Against high MMR players, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to move and lay out the perfect observer ward before they actually click on you, especially if they already have one in the surroundings. Thanks to it, he spots just a glimpse of the Pudge around and plays defensively, not really dying once again. Obviously, you still want to max Lightning Bolt, and it was just not optimal to do it without the second point in arc lighting because of all we already discussed. Another top tier play happens as SCC brings his boots. He doesn't have space on his inventory and he drops the Tango to get it. Keep watching what happens. He was aware that DK had a regen rune, and as DK pops the dragon form and boops him in the face, to steal the Tango actually, SCC understands the play instantly. You don't pop DK form and then you retreat for nothing, so he waits a couple of seconds and ults as the regen gets used, cancelling it perfectly. You might think that this was a waste of kill potential, but there's none. The ult means 200 mana for Zeus, while it would mean 700 HP restored on a cloak DK and 400 mana on an ulted DK that would force the tower. Great awareness and great showing of high level trading. In fact, we will see how the ult is actually the least important part of the new Zeus. But anyways, DK still has the remaining bottle charges, but not only they will be spent right now, Zeus knows where everyone is and he can grab the 8-minute rune with ease after shoving the wave. You can see that he considers going top, but it seems like his team is doing fine and you don't want to leave your lane with an ulted DK there. As DK gets back, you can clearly see the buffs to Lightning Bolt making a difference. A lot of harass and range as DK gives up on chasing S.C.C. And that's not only it, now that the Lightning Bolt has higher cast range, the TP rotations from Zeus early game have way more impact than before. As we said, this hero is very slow and the old cast range was not the greatest in this meta of DKs, Monkey Kings, X's. But here, he punishes the dive on his support while he finishes the arcane boots in the side shop. Also, look how Doom melts afterwards. The buff to this hero impacts the early game, which is one of the most important parts of any hero this meta, snowballing early on. Just a moment later, Radiant starts diving the PA top, and note how S.C.C is weighted slightly so that Radiant's dive is deep enough so that they cannot disengage. Unfortunately, a Doom comes out of nowhere and he smartly disengages, but he doesn't leave the fight. He knows he's not under vision. That's until DK comes from his own jungle. But still got a kill, forced an ult, and PA doesn't die. When he respawns, note how as they set up to go bottom, he scouts the region as soon as they get there with the Lightning Bolt since he's very healthy, and they end up fighting Punch. You will see S.C.C getting hooked a lot, and most of it comes from Zeus having horrible cast points and turn rates. As he zones X away, note what happens. Gets hooked, but since Punch takes too long to dismember, not only he gets away, but now he can deal damage from farther away than normal, and they take a convincing fight from the Radiant. He also makes sure to Lightning Bolt areas where wards are usually placed. If a team is playing that aggressively, you do expect wards, but unfortunately, he finds nothing until he hits this spot. This is very important when you're playing Zeus. Being sure that the enemy has no vision of where you're farming or where you are before the fight starts is very important, and we're going to see him just using the ult to get awareness of where everyone is, but we'll talk more about that later. Speaking of Zeus again, one thing to mention is how strong Zeus' experience talent is. 30% at level 10 might seem standard to you, but on a hero that gets experience globally with not only Thunder's God Wrath, but Nimbus eventually, being able to reach the level 20 and 25 talents makes this hero's KO insanely better than the old Zeus, and that's the talent that S.C.C and most Zeus nowadays are picking up. You usually go Veil anyways, and Veil already gives you a decent chunk of armor, and more of it's definitely overkill. And sometimes it can even make you scale slower, because if you're owning, you're going to get even more ahead. With just armor, even if you start owning everyone, you're not going to scale as hard, and that might be a problem in the mid to late game. The next item of choice is the Aetherlands. It just potentializes what the first buff to Lightning Bolt already did to the hero, and the mana regen is always good to have. You can also see how the increased cast range allows S.C.C to follow up slightly faster here, but more importantly, as they chase DK, even though it doesn't hit the hero, it gives them more vision than usual so that the Sand King can get the Burrow Strike and eventually the kill. I know it might seem as if I'm overhyping the Lightning Bolt buff, but I'm not. As S.C.C walks around here, he spots the dragons moving, so he felt like maybe a support was already in the area. He makes sure to check it out, and eventually as he farmed the dragons, look how half a second or more is the difference between PA dying or leaving here. Since S.C.C knows there's no vision in this area, they smoke, and I want you to pay attention as they go on DK. S.C.C doesn't focus only on killing him, but notes that Pudge is bottom, and he's also isolated, which means he might migrate towards his jungle. Note how he pings this area where he might be coming from, and eventually he does show up. They don't engage, but it's nice to also make use of the global vision and not only the damage you get with the Thunder God Wrath, and he does this a lot in the mid to late game. S.C.C ends up taking a tower by himself since he had a double damage and vision of most heroes fighting top, and thanks to his Rubik taking care of him, note what happens as S.C.C pushes the next wave. It looks ingenious, right? A support Rubik and a Zeus. There's no way Monkey King, Doom, and Pudge cannot handle it, but thanks to the active aura from Rubik, the damage output goes through the roof when you have Veil on top of it. As Doom chases, also note how he only turns when he has the Lightning Bolt and not Arc Lightning, guaranteeing him the kill and surviving with a quick TP hump. Another very common addition to Zeus nowadays, and even back in the days, is Boots of Travels. This hero lacks two things most of the time, mana regen and mobility. The travels make the hero able to engage and disengage easier, makes use of his wave clear for split push around the map, and also makes him able to show up in fights before Nimbus is available for him. By the way, a big reason for me to like the travels is that Nimbus really shines after level 20 with the 0.5 lightning bolt talent. Before that, you will almost always hit one lightning bolt as a follow-up to an ally, whereas with the longer stun there's much more value and your allies can actually set up for the next lightning bolt. Obviously, Nimbus is always good, but I like the travels at this stage because at this rate, he'll probably finish the eggs at around level 20. Actually, thanks to the move speed from haste, S.C.C takes a great fight top. I feel like he wanted to quickly check the high ground area with W, but since he was that fast, he dodges the call and they win a dominant fight. You can see the build working the entire game really. The cast range from Netherlands is core, and the move speed from travels really helps allowing S.C.C to regen as fast as possible after a fight like this, but have travels to follow up when necessary. Every fight is kind of a repeat of what I'm saying. For instance here, the follow up from Zeus is insane on X, and thanks to his travels and move speed talent, he's able to disengage from DK. And honestly, he only dies because of a weird mistake. It looked like Pudge's hook was going to land if he kept on going, and he stops and gets hooked. So that was pretty weird. But I actually felt the same that S.C.C felt there. I'm not sure if this was a high level play from the Pudge. S.C.C finishes the eggs when he's level 21, so that's pretty cool. And at this stage of the game, Zeus starts falling off a little bit. He died once, the BKB starts getting ready, but at least he gets one kill on Monkey King. They end up getting Aegis, and while Zeus seemed like quite a simple hero, there are a few tricks on how to increase your efficiency. For instance, in this fight, pay attention how S.C.C plays. First of all, before his team even engages, he already lightning bolts looking for wards, and they find him. A fight started anyways, but look how he plays. He lightning bolts, but he doesn't Nimbus straight away. He waits until the stun from the first lightning bolt expires, then drops the next one, while he just arcs from behind. Then, as Nimbus lightning bolt is ending, he follows up with another one, and you can see the value of getting the talent. It's a lot of damage and lockdown. Something that Zeus lacked heavily before the talent introduction and the lockdown. As the game unfolds, S.C.C gets a Blink Dagger as his 5th slot, and that really helps in him being able to initiate and counter-initiate more safely. Zeus can't really deal with most radiant heroes if he gets initiated, and one thing to note as the game unfolds is that most of your damage when you have your eggs doesn't come necessarily from your ult. Using your ult to get enemy vision, does not dying, does not be initiating, and taking a fight afterwards more often than not is better than trying to have as much DPS as possible. Sometimes if you don't commit your ult to know where people are, you either have to play super passively, and thus you don't push your waves, you don't get farm, or you just get initiated and die as you do it. You can see that he ult here gets vision of everyone, the Nimbus offers a lot of lockdown for his team, and with the Blink Dagger he quickly addresses that fight. As the buyback comes, look how the Blink Dagger allows him to be way past the Wukong's command while still providing some damage. Unfortunately though, the BKB timings from Radiant paired with the buyback makes this fight hard and S.C.C falls. The blink can also be a good way to survive after the Aegis, but unfortunately it also doesn't work here. After that fight, we see a very similar thing coming from S.C.C. He sees this Arcane Rune, a very valuable resource at this stage, but he ults before going for it, to be sure he will not die, and he does that very often. With that vision, they know that Radiant are slightly spread out, and they go in. He Arcane Runes before using Nimbus, and we can see his choices being very important in the survival in this fight. Not only the Nimbus stuns Doom as he blinks without BKB, his move speed being higher than Doom allows him to live through it, while the Nimbus zones Radiant out. We can also see him playing around BKBs very well. For instance, here his Shaker gets doomed by the BKB Doom, and he doesn't panic Nimbus, he waits calmly, and when it's about to end, he only uses the Lightning Bolt, since it was not necessary. Also worth noting that he used the ult before the fight started, giving him the chance to position perfectly somewhere he knows Radiant is not. So he's not the one getting Dragon Tailed or doomed, and this always plays in his advantage since he has so much farm, he cannot die at the start of any fight. Another similar fight happens here, as S.C.C TPs, and as soon as he does, he lightning bolts a key area to be sure he's not being watched. But the important part happens a few seconds later. He Nimbus as the Fisher is about to land so that DK doesn't BKB in time. That gives time for the Echo to stun him, proccing more damage followed by Enchant Totem, which means that the almost 3k HP DK starts the fight with half his HP popping the BKB. As Triple C's hero half the time is not even showing in his screen, by the way, and as the BKBs get lower and lower, Zeus starts prevailing again, and they win the game eventually. This game was actually fairly long, so it's very hard for me in one day to analyze the entirety of it, so if you want to watch more, you can do it here, or you can use this replay ID. As of always, if you want to know more about my life or want to get some tips about Dota, follow me on Twitter. If you want to see me casting, or if you want to see me play Dota, usually on weekends, follow me on Twitch. If you want some spoilers about my life or what's the next video, Instagram is the way to go. And if you want to talk about Dota or people that care about your crispy boy, please join our Discord channel. That's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed yourselves, and bye.